put the statement on the desk, Christina, and you're free to go. The editor-in-chief's voice was even, without a hint of emotion, while he pushed a folder with a pre-trial claim along the edge of the desk. You've put the whole company at risk, and I'm not going down with you. Christina looked at the thick stack of papers, where her surname appeared on every page next to a compensation amount of 2 million hryvnias. But our lawyer checked the material. She turned her gaze to Maxim, her department head, and, at the same time, the man with whom she had shared an apartment for the last 2 years. Before we begin, I ask you to support Ukrainian content. Subscribe to the channel and please leave a like. It's very important for the growth of my channel. Now, back to the story. Maxim looked away, pretending to be deeply interested in the view outside the window of the KYV office, where a light autumn rain had just begun. You're the author, Christia, he replied quietly without turning around. You should have made sure the source was reliable. We can't cover for your negligence. She sat on the hard office chair and felt the tips of her fingers go numb. The room smelled of expensive coffee and, faintly, the printing ink from fresh copies. Beyond the glass partition, the life of the large newsroom was boiling. Someone was laughing. Someone was talking loudly on the phone. Keyboards were clacking monotonously. Only yesterday she had been an integral part of this machine. A star whose story about illegal development on the Dnipro embankment had gathered over 300,000 views in the first day. Today she had become toxic ballast, something to be disposed of in a 5-minute business conversation. Maxim, you were the one who gave me that flash drive with the documents. Her voice trembled, betraying her, though she tried with all her might to stay composed. You said the source was 100% verified. You rushed me into publishing because we had to beat the competitors. Chief Editor Ole exhaled heavily and rubbed the bridge of his nose, showing his fatigue with the scene. This is kindergarten, Christina. No one held anyone by the hand. Your name is under the article. The developer's lawyers proved that the financial reports you published were accrued, low-quality fake. They're filing a lawsuit for protection of honor, dignity, and business reputation. Our company has already issued an official denial, clearly stating that this was your personal initiative and that the editorial team does not share your methods of gathering information. You either resign voluntarily right now, or we'll fire you under the article and file a regressive claim for the damages. Choose. Silently, she took the clean sheet of paper that Ole had thoughtfully placed at the edge of the desk, and the black pen. Her fingers barely obeyed her. She wrote a few lines of standard text, added today's date, and signed her name. Maxim still did not return, continuing to study the gray clouds above the Capitol. 40 minutes later, Christina was standing outside. A fine drizzly rain was falling in KYV, instantly turning fallen leaves into slippery mush. Damp air seeped through her light coat. In her hands she held an ordinary cardboard box with her personal belongings. Her favorite ceramic cup with a chipped rim, a small houseplant she kept forgetting to water, several work notebooks, spare low-heeled shoes. That was all that remained of 5 years of exhausting work, chronic sleep deprivation, failing eyesight, and a constant chase after sensational stories. She walked toward the station, trying to look only at the ground. It seemed to her that everyone around knew about her disgrace. Just yesterday her phone had been exploding with calls from colleagues, PR people, and experts who wanted to comment on her new material. She had been invited to TV broadcasts. Now the smartphone screen remained black and dead. No one had sent even one message of support. No one had asked how she was doing. Christina went down to the station, passed through the turnstile, and took a deep breath of the familiar smell of dampness and warm metal. Once, years ago, that smell had seemed to her like the scent of great opportunities. Back then, at 22, a philology graduate from Uzhhorod, she had first stepped onto the platform of the capital's train station with one suitcase and huge ambitions. She wanted to write about important things. She wanted her name to be known across the country. She wanted to be at the top. The train from Lviv emerged from the tunnel. She boarded the half-empty carriage, sat in a free seat in the corner, and closed her eyes. Memories she had long buried deep in her mind suddenly surfaced with painful clarity. Is Horod. A warm May evening. They stood on the pedestrian bridge over the Is River. The water below quietly murmured, reflecting the light of the street lamps. The air smelled of linden blossoms and fresh pastries from the nearest cafe on Corso. Vasil held her hands. His palms were warm and reliable, and he himself looked a little tired after classes at the university. Christy, think about it again. His voice was calm, but worry was visible in his eyes. Why do you need that, KYV? There are thousands like you there. Everyone is running somewhere, stepping on each other, trying to grab a piece. We can make a great life here. I've already found a job as an assistant in a notary office. You can go to a local online outlet or television. In a few years, we'll take out a mortgage. We'll live quietly, normally. Then she abruptly pulled her hands away. The word normally irritated her terribly. Normal meant like everyone else. Paycheck to paycheck, one vacation a year, conversations about daily life and supermarket discounts. I don't want normal, Vassia, she replied coldly, looking at his simple, open face, which suddenly seemed incredibly provincial and boring. I want more. I'm cramped here. I'm suffocating in this place where everyone knows everyone. Where the biggest event of the year is cherry blossom season. I've been offered a job at a Capital News aggregator. This is my chance to make it. And what about us? He asked so quietly that she barely heard him over the sound of the water. There is no us if you're going to sit in that office your whole life, sorting through other people's certificates. You're a good guy, Vassia, but we're on completely different paths. I don't want to drag you along, and you won't make me stay. She turned and walked away without looking back. She knew he was standing by the bridge and watching her leave. She knew she was hurting him, trampling on 3 years of their relationship. But ambition drowned out her conscience. It felt to her like she was leaving behind her gray past for a shining future. She moved to KYV, rented a tiny room in Troyeshina, and began working 14 hours a day. She wrote short news items, did reviews, took any side job she could get. Then came the move to a more serious publication, the first investigations of her own. A move into a better apartment in Apollon, and meetings with Maxim. He was different. He wore branded clothes, knew the right people, easily solved problems, and spoke in all the correct, beautiful phrases about freedom of speech and journalistic ethics. He introduced her to the world of big games, and today he was the one who had thrown her out of that game. The train braked sharply, and Christina opened her eyes. Osakorki Station, her current reality. She rented a two-room apartment here together with Maxim. More precisely, she paid half the rent, and he paid the other half. Although his income was 3 times larger, he always emphasized that the financial independence of partners was the foundation of a healthy relationship and the key to equality. She agreed, seeing it as a sign of modernity. Christina opened the door with her keys. The apartment was quiet and empty. She put the box on the floor in the hallway without even taking off her shoes, went into the kitchen, and poured herself a glass of ordinary tap water. The water tasted bitter. She sat on a chair and stared at one spot on the wall. 2 hours later, a key turned in the lock. Maxim entered. He was wearing his perfectly tailored cashmere coat. In his hands, he held a large paper bag with the logo of a well-known restaurant. Seeing Christina sitting in the kitchen in complete darkness, he flinched slightly but quickly composed himself and clicked on the light switch. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" he asked in a casual tone, as if nothing special had happened today, and began placing plastic food containers on the table. "Will you eat dinner? I got sushi and salads." Christina looked at him and did not recognize him. The person with whom she had slept in the same bed, shared future plans, laughed at stupid jokes from colleagues, had suddenly turned into a completely foreign, rational, and cold mechanism. "Maxim, what was that today?" Her voice sounded muffled and hoarse. He stopped unpacking the bag, sighed heavily, leaned both hands on the kitchen countertop, and lowered his head. This was crisis management, Christina. The company had to save face in front of investors and readers. The situation got out of control. Save face by throwing me under the bus. She slowly rose from the chair. You knew perfectly well that you were the one who brought those documents. Why did you stay silent in Ola's office? Why didn't you tell the truth, that it was your source? Maxim twisted his mouth into a smile, pulling bamboo chopsticks out of a paper sleeve. Because it wouldn't have changed anything at all. They would have fired both of us. This way, only you were fired. You understand that in this profession, everyone is on their own. You wanted a loud story. You wanted the award for Best Investigation of the Month. You almost got it, but you didn't verify the data through independent channels. You made a fatal mistake. You said the source was the former chief accountant of the developer company, who wanted revenge on the owners. You guaranteed the figures were real and pressured me to publish the text without delay. She shouted, feeling everything inside boiling with helplessness and injustice. I could have been wrong, he answered calmly, not even raising his voice. I'm a living person too, but the signature under the article is yours, and the legal responsibility is entirely yours. By the way, about responsibility. He hesitated a little, shifted from foot to foot, and looked toward the window. I think we should live separately for some time. Christina froze. The air seemed to have been sucked out of the room. She could not believe what she had just heard. What did you say? We need to live separately, he repeated more firmly, looking her in the eyes. This scandal is very toxic. I absolutely can't be seen near you if I want to keep my position and reputation in the media. Besides, this lawsuit, the huge claims, this insane stress and negativity. I'm not in a position to carry all of this myself and support you. I need peace. I'll pack the most necessary things today. I'll move in with a friend for a couple of weeks, and then we'll see how things develop. I already paid my share of the rent for this month, so you can stay here for now. He said it so casually and calmly, as if he were informing her he was going to the store for bread and milk. No emotions, no regret, no empathy. Just pure, refined, calculated selfishness. She didn't even cry. The tears had simply dried up somewhere on the way in the metro. She sat silently on a stool in the hallway and watched as Maxim methodically and very neatly packed his things into a large sports bag. He took his expensive shirts, his work laptop, his favorite sneakers, and even the special coffee sazy they had bought together at a flea market during a trip to Lviv. When the front door quietly closed behind him, the apartment seemed enormous, cold, and completely dead. The next 3 days merged into one endless gray nightmare. Christina barely slept and ate almost nothing except strong black coffee. She sat for hours in front of her laptop screen, studying the official statement of claim that had been sent to her by courier the day after her dismissal. The developer company demanded an immediate retraction of the information, a public apology on several national television channels, and compensation for moral and reputational damage in the amount of 2 million hryvnias. To her, it was an astronomical, impossible sum. She checked the balance of her bank card. There was a little over 20,000 hryvnias left. Her last salary for a partial month and small savings. That would last only for a month of very modest living and the next month's rent. She started calling lawyers, searching online for firms specializing in defending journalists, freedom of speech, or at least civil claims for protection of honor and dignity. Reality turned out to be brutal and sobering. Most well-known lawyers, hearing the name of the developer company, immediately found a reason to refuse. Christina heard the same standard excuses over and over. We're overloaded right now. This isn't really our area. We don't take on cases with such obviously weak evidence. Those who at least agreed to meet and look at the documents named starting fees. That made Christina's vision go dark. "Understand, the case is 99% lost," said one elderly lawyer in a worn-out office in Podil, where she came on the fourth day. He had spent a long time studying the printouts, constantly adjusting his glasses. "Your sources turned out to be fiction. You have no documentary confirmation of your words, except for that unfortunate flash drive. The files on it can be generated in any editor within an hour. Their lawyers will tear you apart in court. The only real option is to try to reduce the compensation to a more acceptable amount and ask a court for installment payments over several years. I can take on this process, but my retainer for reviewing the case and the first hearing is 100,000 hryvnias, plus a percentage of the amount we managed to recover." She left his office feeling intensely nauseous. She did not have that kind of money, and there was nowhere to get it. Her parents in Izhorod lived on her father's modest pension and her mother's small salary as a primary school teacher. She simply had no moral right to hang that enormous debt on them. Her friends in Kyiv turned out to be ordinary colleagues in the profession, who quickly vanished into thin air as soon as real trouble appeared. Kristina returned home, made strong tea, and sat down at her laptop again. She mindlessly scrolled through pages on the web, reading articles about similar court cases in Ukraine, searching for at least some clue, some precedent where an ordinary journalist had won against a large corporation with unlimited financial resources. And suddenly her gaze caught on a long headline in a specialized legal online publication: "David versus Goliath. How a small law firm forced a capital developer to retreat." The article was a year old. It described in detail how an initiative group of residents from one of Kyiv's residential districts had managed to stop the illegal construction of a green park area and won in all court instances. The developer was different, but the scale of the company and its influence were absolutely comparable to the people who were now destroying her life. Kristina began to read carefully. The journalist praised the aggressive defense strategy, the unconventional procedural moves of the lawyers, and the painstaking work with permits. She reached the final paragraph, where the names of the winners of that case were listed. The main strategist and representative of the community's interests in court was senior partner of the law firm Vasil Horenko. Kristina blinked once, then again. She shook her head, thinking she was hallucinating from chronic sleep deprivation and stress. There couldn't be many people in Ukraine with that name. It was just a very ordinary first and last name. Her trembling fingers copied the name from the article, pasted it into the search bar, added the words Lawyer Kyiv, and pressed search. The first result was the official website of the law firm. A modern minimalist design, strict dark colors. She went to the Our Team section, opened the page of the managing partner. From the monitor screen at her, a man looked out in a dark blue business suit and a perfectly white shirt without a tie. He had a short, stylish haircut, a confident, slightly stern gaze, and a barely noticeable crease between his brows that had never been there before. He had matured. His features had become sharper. The youthful provincial softness was gone. But there was no mistake. It was him, Vasil. Her Vasil from Izhorod, the same simple guy she had left on the bridge, cruelly accusing him of lacking ambition. The one who had wanted to work in a small notary office and live an ordinary life. She began reading his official biography, and every printed word struck her like a whip across the face. Graduated from the law faculty in Izhorod with honors. Moved to Kyiv a year later. Started as a junior lawyer in a large international consulting company. 4 years later became a full partner. 2 years after that founded his own law firm, specializing in complex corporate law, defense against corporate raiding, and opposition to illegal construction projects. Ranked among the top 30 lawyers in the country in his field according to reputable ratings. Kristina slowly closed the laptop lid and covered her face with her hands. It was some incredibly cruel joke of fate. The person she had openly dismissed in pursuit of success in the capital had achieved colossal success, while she herself, with all her enormous ambitions, had ended up at the very bottom, disgraced and burdened with a multi-million debt. She sat like that for about an hour. Her pride screamed that it would be better to take a loan at insane interest, better to sell her own organs, better to work as a cleaner for 10 years than to call him and ask for help. How would she look him in the eyes after everything she had said back then? What would she say? Hi. Do you remember how I wiped my feet on you and called you a loser? And now save me because I turned out to be completely worthless. But when evening came and thick darkness filled the room again, the animal fear of the future overcame any pride. If he really was the powerful specialist described in the articles, then he was her only real chance not to ruin her life completely and not end up in prison for fraud. If the developer decided to turn the case into a criminal one, the next morning she woke up at 7. For the first time in days, she forced herself to have a proper breakfast, washed her hair thoroughly, dried it, put on light makeup trying to hide the dark circles under her eyes, and pale skin as much as possible. She took her best, though already 3 years old, strict pantsuit out of the closet. She did not want to look like a miserable victim. She found the number of his office reception in the contacts on the website and dialed. The rings seemed endless. Law firm. Good morning. How?